You know, even after all of the hours and hours and hours of research that I did before I retired, you know, I had that feeling of, am I going to struggle like other people talk about? And you know, so let's go ahead and talk about some of the things that people are struggling with in retirement. All right, and probably the number one thing is I'll be bored in retirement. And you know, that's really legitimate. And as I'm entering into my second year of retirement, there are days that I do get a little bit bored because I really haven't planned anything out. But for the most part, my daily routine kind of takes over and takes care of most of my day. So, you know, I get up in the mornings, I eat a good breakfast. Of course, I do sleep in quite a bit, but I eat a good breakfast and then I do my exercise. Well, after my exercise, a lot of the times what I do is I work on my YouTube videos. And that takes up a pretty good portion of the day. And days that I don't do that, I belong to a golf club, and we kind of have a group text. And, you know, once in a while I'll get a text and they'll say, hey, we're all going to meet at 10 o'clock at the golf course, and I'll take off and go do that. You know, on days that I don't do that, I may go fishing, or I may just grab my camera and go out to the lake and take some pictures. So for the most part, you know, I'm not struggling too much with the boredom piece of it. And the number two thing that I hear is, you know what, I got plenty of time left. You know, I don't need to retire just yet. I've got all the time in the world. You know, I was a little bit into that, and I actually ended up working a year extra, you know, to pay off some debts that I wanted to get paid off to feel a little more comfortable in retirement. But guess what? 6 months into retirement, I had a subdermal hematoma, which was life-threatening, and it took 5 surgeries on my brain for them to go in and get my brain straightened out to where I could, you know, function regularly. And I still have a little bit of deficit with balance, but for the most part, I came out of it in pretty good shape. So I am very, very lucky to have done that. But saying that, you know, I got all the time in the world and I don't have to worry about it, I'm in good health, you know what, that can change in a heartbeat. So don't always assume that your health is going to be good and that you're going to live into your 90s and that you're going to be very active in your 80s and 90s, because you may not be. Like I always say, try to retire as soon as you can and plan to retire early. Don't plan to retire at age 70 when you're doing your financial plan. Plan to retire at 62, and then if you make your goal, you know, you're in good shape. If you want to work longer, fine, but at least you've met your goal at an earlier age. So hey, I'd like to pause the video for just a minute, and this little channel is starting to gain some momentum, so I'd appreciate it if you'd reach down and drop me a comment. Let me know where you're from, or let me know what you think is going to be one of your biggest hurdles in going into retirement and what's your biggest scare. So let's go ahead and continue on with the video. And number 3 thing I hear, now is not the time. You know, oh my goodness, inflation's high. You know, we just have a new presidency coming in. This just isn't a good time. The market is going to be affected drastically, and we just have bad times coming. I can see it and I can feel it in my bones. I'll tell you a little something. If you study history, markets are going to change. They're going to fluctuate. We're going to change, you know, government policies quite often. As most of you know, we have a lot of Social Security issues coming up that have to be dealt with in the next 10 years. There are a lot of things on the government's plate and on the stock market, but you know what? They're always there. I mean, it's very seldom you can say, you know what? For the next 10 years, it's going to be smooth sailing on the stock market, or for the next 10 years, our policies are not going to change, because it's probably not going to happen. So you know what? If you can execute your plan in what you consider a poor economy, then you ought to be in pretty good shape. So I'm not saying that there aren't times when you want to back up and take a look at it and say, you know what, I want to give it 6 months. I want to see how this is going to come out. but 6 months is not 5 years. It's not 10 years. You know, you can't put this off forever if you're going to retire. Okay, number 4 here. This one is probably really legitimate. And this is, how am I going to be able to afford health care? Yeah, that's a big one, and it's very legitimate. So there are a couple of options that you have. If you can keep your income low enough, you know, you can use the Affordable Care Act right now to go ahead and get your health insurance. You can use COBRA, but COBRA is pretty expensive. And I'm lucky I can keep my income up higher because my insurance, I do get a subsidy from my old employer, but it's not really good. It still costs me, I think in 2025, it's going to be $1,900 a month. So it's not very cheap. It's not really affordable, but you know, we can't go without it. We've got to have that health insurance, and we've got to keep that going. Now, another way you can look at it is you can go into a bridge retirement, which basically is saying that, you know, I'm going to have to go ahead and work part-time or have a good side hustle in order to make ends meet, you know, before I get on Social Security, before Medicare kicks in and all that. So you may have to do some kind of bridge retirement, or that may be an option that you want to look at. Fifth thing I've heard and I've read about is, you know what? It's just easier to keep working. And you know what? It probably is. You're in your daily routine. You know, you're around people that you know, people you trust. And, you know, it is easier to just go ahead and work. Sure, it is. But what are you missing out on? What are you missing out on in retirement? Retirement is all about your freedom in discovering what you can do, your passions in this next phase of life. So let's go ahead and look forward to that next phase of life and see what we can do with our freedom and our independence in our later years. And of course, those dreaded words, I'm just going to work one more year. Yeah, I fell into that trap. I worked an extra year. And, you know, I felt really good about it when I retired that I worked that extra year. But then after I had my health scare, I was like, oh, geez, I kind of wished I'd just given up that payment and went ahead and retired that year earlier. I could have got a lot of traveling and stuff done because I'm right at the 1 year mark, and we're just now getting where we were about a year ago with being comfortable for me to drive my motorhome and travel the country. So working that one extra year, the problem with working the one extra year is it can turn into 3 years, it can turn into 5 years, 7 years. And you can just keep telling yourself, I'm going to work that extra year. Because you know what? Financially, it's always going to make sense for you to work that extra year. Yeah, it's always going to make more sense for you to go ahead and work that extra year. So I hope this video's helped you out. And if it has, if you would, go ahead and reach down and hit that like button and watch this video next.